Welcome back to another transfer tips video ahead of Double Gameweek 29. I'll be discussing 12 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know which other players you would put in each of these categories that I haven't mentioned today. If you end up enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new, and also share this video with anyone who watches FPL or that wants to be engaged with the game more and have some ideas for the transfers to make for Double Gameweek 29. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. It won't surprise many of you to see Bruno Fernandes feature in this video, especially in the buy section. After all, he's the 5th most transferred in player this week at the time of this recording, with over 85,000 transfers in. His ownership is only around 7.3%, and he also has a price of 9.6 million, although you would expect that to go up maybe once or twice before the Gameweek 29 deadline. And a few other things I want to notice and actually make a note of is the fact that he has 4 double-digit returns, and that 3 of them have come since Gameweek 20. So since the World Cup and also since Gameweek 20 in the last 8 game weeks, Bruno Fernandes has been very impressive, and he's also had that double-digit haul potential. He has blanked a few times recently, but in general, since Gameweek 17, he has hauled or delivered a return in most of these games. So I think he's a really good option for this double game week, and he's also got great fixtures in Game Weeks 30 and 31. He does blank in Game Week 32 though, because of the FA Cup semi-finals. Man United will play Brighton there, so their game against Chelsea will be void, and that will be suspended and rearranged for another game week. Then you look at the games like Game Week 33 against Tottenham away. I still think Bruno can do well in that match, and after all, arguably his best performance of the season came against Spurs at home, and I think he's a really good option for that game week too. But really, 32 is the only big problem for Bruno Fernandes and all these Man United assets, and I think he's a really good buy. You look at the underlying numbers, they're very impressive. The XG might not be what it once was, and he hasn't been getting as many penalties as he was a few seasons ago, but the assist threat is always there. He's creating chances, and he also is very good for bonus points. He's got 17 this season, and he's only got 12 goal contributions. So if he can step up these goals and assists, and he has been doing that since the World Cup, I think he can get even more bonus points and double-digit hauls. There's still a long way to go before the Gameweek 29 deadline, but James Maddison is the 13th most transferred in player at the time of this recording. I think he'll get closer to the top 5 once we get to the 1st of April, but Maddison is a very good FPL asset. There are some pros and cons, of course, like with every player, but Maddison certainly divides opinion. He's got great goals and assist figures, but the underlying numbers aren't necessarily that great, and they never have been, but he always seems to deliver once he can stay fit and build a run of games. And actually, a few things to note is that his ownership is still under 10%, so kind of a differential in the grand scheme of things. And he also has 3 double-digit returns, which maybe isn't the greatest, but that's the same as Bukayo Saka, who is the highest scoring FPL midfielder so far this season. And the big problem, I think, with James Maddison, and something I haven't mentioned in my other videos yet, is the fact that he has 8 yellow cards, so 2 more, and he will be suspended. So I won't be concerned for Game Week 29, of course, but the big problem is Game Weeks 30 and beyond, where he could be suspended for one of those games. And the only bad fixture is Man City away in Game Week 31. You want him for every single other game, especially if you don't have a free hit to navigate Game Week 32, or you want to use that chip for another game week. So Maddison's a very good player with great fixtures, and despite Leicester's woes, Maddison is still a good FPL asset. My main issue is the yellow cards, and also Maddison's injuries are always a concern, and if he can stay fit, I think he's a great season keeper, but I have a feeling they might not be, and he'll pick up another injury. Isak has always shown promise, whether coming off the bench, starting games, but his main problem has been staying fit. And now that he's got a run of games going, he's shown some consistency. I think he's a really good differential to buy, and he's going to become really popular by the time we get to the 1st of April. A few things to note is that he's the 2nd most transferred in player so far this week, with 120,000 transfers in, and his ownership is still 3.3%, but I wouldn't be surprised if that reached 10% by the time we get to the Game Week 29 deadline. And he's got 5 goals in 7 starts, 6 goals in 10 appearances overall. That is really good numbers. You look at the XG, the big chances, they all point towards sustainability of returns, but the big question is, can Isak stay fit? Because the other big conundrum is him versus Wilson, and Isak should be nailed on starting the games for Newcastle right now, with Wilson being off form and Isak just showing some absolute consistency and good goal scoring prowess. And he's also got 12 bonus points, which, to have 12 bonus points in just 10 appearances and around 620 minutes of football. That is absolutely staggering, and it points towards a really high ceiling on certain occasions. He also could have a double in 31 against Brighton and Aston Villa. He's got a double right now in Game Week 29 and some decent fixtures overall. Not that great, to be fair, but still pretty good in the grand scheme of things. So I think Isak is worth buying, and I'm seeing a lot of people selling Ivan Toney to Isak. I think that's understandable, although I probably would keep Ivan Toney, as we'll get onto right now. Ivan Toney's featured a lot of times in these videos, and he typically is a hold because of how good he's been all season, and there's always a point of discussion with him. Is he going to be suspended because of yellow cards or because of his off-the-field activities? And right now, we're once again in a situation where he's got 9 yellow cards, 1 more, and he's suspended for the subsequent game. So there's a real chance he gets booked against Brighton and misses the second game against Manchester United, and I think that will be the big reason why a lot of us will be looking to sell him, but I still think he's worth holding. Now, if I didn't have Ivan Toney, as much as I rate him as an asset and I think he can do really well in Game Week 29, I wouldn't buy him in, because you look at the long-term fixtures, especially from Game Week 33 until the end of the season, and there are some real tough games in there. And not only that, you've got more emerging figures in the forward line, apart from Haaland and Kane, who have been ever present. You've got Ollie Watkins, Kai Havertz, and a few other forwards like Isak, who we just discussed. But the underlying numbers, the goal output has been staggering from Ivan Toney, real consistent, and there are so many different pros behind owning Ivan Toney. The problem is the suspension risk, and that's why I wouldn't buy him in, but if I had him, I'd still look to keep him, and that's what I'm probably going to do with my own team selection. So be sure to check out that video, which is already out on the channel. He's got 5 double-digit returns and also 45 transfers in and out, so it does show you that he polarizes opinion. We all know what he can do, but we also know that the yellow cards can be a real frustration and a source of pain in Game Week 29. Now, one thing to note is that despite how poor the fixtures are on paper against Brighton and Man United, the fact is he got 2 assists versus Man United in a 4-0 victory in the reverse fixture and 9 points overall. And against Brighton, he scored a brace and got 12 points. And that was actually a week where I just bought him in, and he scored a penalty in that match too. So Ivan Toney is a really good asset. He's fixture proof. He can do well in any single game. But as always, he's a suspension risk. I can understand if you look to sell him, but I'd personally keep if you can do so. I've been talking about Estupiñán a lot in my recent videos. I bought him in on the wild card, and he's been so consistent. I don't think a lot of us realize how consistent he has been in the last few game weeks, but his ownership is still 11.2%, and he's the 8th most transferred in player this week, with 66,000 transfers in, and that's only going to rise from now until the deadline. And he's the highest scoring defender since Game Week 20, so it's not just a period of 2 or 3 game weeks. We're talking about 8 game weeks. Of course, he did blank in Game Week 28, so he didn't feature, but in the last 8 games, you know, for him to be the highest scoring defender is a real achievement. And yes, we've seen a decline with the likes of Trippier. We don't have Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson continuously getting so many points, but Estupiñán has been so consistent. He's getting assists, bonus points, and some clean sheets along the way, and Brighton are looking really impressive. Now, I'm talking about holding him, and you look at some of these fixtures coming up. Tottenham away, Chelsea away, Man City at home. Those are really tough, but remember, Brighton could have a double in 31 against Newcastle as well. They've got a double right now in 29, which is fairly decent, and they've got some good long-term fixtures. And honestly, Estupiñán and Brighton assets, I think, could be rather fixture-proof. And you look at games like Tottenham away, why can't Brighton go there and keep a clean sheet or even win the game? They can definitely do that. You look at the underlying numbers, they're not the best you'll ever see, but they're still quite decent. 4 big chances created. You look at the expected assists of 2.76. They're not too bad. I don't think the shot volume is that great. The XG certainly isn't. But Estupiñán is a good asset. He will continue to cause threats down the left wing, and he's a very good asset. Now, the big problem with Estupiñán, of course, is that Ecuador play Australia twice. Both games are in Australia, which is a bit strange, by the way. And that final game against Australia is 4 days before the Brentford at home fixture. But I still think Estupiñán will start both games in 29, but some people are very worried and think Estupiñán will be benched. You could also say something similar about Mitoma, who also is going to be travelling half across the world, and he's going to be playing a few days before the Brentford fixture. So look, I wouldn't be too worried. I think Estupiñán will play both games, and the other thing people are pointing towards is the fact that Estupiñán was subbed off at half-time against Grimsby in the FA Cup, and De Zerbi already made that clear that he expected more from Estupiñán, but I wouldn't look too much into that. He is still nailed on in the left-back position. He's been fantastic for for the last few months and also across the whole season, one of the best left backs in the Premier League. So I would still hold Estupinian if you can, and he's only got one blank in his last 8 games. So honestly, I'd hold Estupinian. If I didn't have him, it'd be a bit trickier to make a case to buy him, but honestly, I still would at this point. And in my own team selection, it's between Estupinian and Luke Shaw to buy as my 5th defender. Bukayo Saka is currently priced at 8.6 million and his ownership is around 41%, a bit similar to Ivan Toney. And you look at next season and you could easily see Saka being priced at around 10 million or more. And right now he's offering extremely good value. He's the highest scoring midfielder in the game with 170 points. And in terms of transfers in Game Week 29 so far, only Haaland has been transferred in by more managers when you look at single Game Week options. So Saka has a lot of suitors, despite the fact they only faces Leeds at home. But he actually did really well in the reverse fixture, scoring a goal and getting 9 points overall, a really good finish, a near post one to put Arsenal ahead and give them the win. That was the only goal in that match. And you also look at a few other stats here. He's the joint highest FPL point scorer since the World Cup with 94 alongside Marcus Rashford, and there are so many different things that point towards consistency. The underlying numbers have actually improved over the last few weeks. There's some real consistency and sustainability behind these numbers all of a sudden. When I looked at these stats maybe 5 weeks ago, Saka's stats weren't that great and Martinelli was the standout in terms of XG, expected assists and big chances, but Saka slowly but surely racking all these numbers up. But most importantly, he's got 12 goals and 11 assists, and he's also got 10 official assists, so he's the only Premier League player so far this season to reach double digits in goals and assists. Really good season by Bukayo Saka, a firm contender for player of the season and also for young player of the year, of course. He's been absolutely flying, and Arsenal have some tough fixtures long term, but I'd still hold him actually. He's the only Arsenal player apart from Martinelli I'd look to keep for sure, without any shadow of a doubt. I know Liverpool away is tough, Man City away will be really tough as well, not to mention Newcastle away later in the season, Brighton at home, Chelsea at home. Arsenal don't have an easy run in, but Saka can do well in all of these games. He's been so consistent, and there aren't many midfielders that I'd display Saka with at this moment in time. Martin Odegaard has had a great season. He's also terrifically improved upon his goals and assists, and he's a firm contender for player of the season, just like with Bukayo Saka. But in terms of FPL, his returns have slowly dried up recently, and I think the introduction of Trossard in the starting 11 has really benefited Martinelli, and there's now a clear difference between the Brazilian and Martin Odegaard in terms of goals and assist potential, which is a shame because Odegaard, especially in the first few weeks after the World Cup, he was on fire, arguably the best player in the league in December and January, which is why he won the Player of the Month awards, of course. But it is a bit frustrating, I think, for Odegaard owners who bought him in. He had better underlying numbers compared to Saka, for example, and he also had some really good performances since the World Cup and also across the whole season. But things haven't gone according to plan recently. His ownership is still around 33%, and he's the third most transferred out player this week, almost 100,000 transfers out, which does say a lot, and I think he's quite an easy sell. Now, he is cheaper than Saka, but I'd still rather keep Saka if you can. But the only way I'd keep Odegaard and sell Saka is if it also means you can bring in Haaland as a result, and you can't by selling Bukayo Saka. But otherwise, I'd sell Odegaard, keep Bukayo Saka, and also, if possible, I'd hold Martinelli because he's a better asset at this moment in time compared to Martin Odegaard. He's got 6 double-digit returns though, but all of them were in 2022, not a single one in this calendar year so far, and that does give you an insight into how things have changed in terms of FPL. And I think the time with Odegaard hauls and stuff has maybe sailed. There are some games like Leeds at home where Odegaard could do really well, so selling him this week could backfire. We all know this, and even games like Liverpool away, West Ham away, Southampton at home, these are all games where Odegaard can do well. But I have to be honest, I'd still look to sell him, and there are other midfielders like James Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, Bukayo Saka, Mitoma, and a few others that we've mentioned in other videos as well that I think will just take the cake and do even better than Odegaard. So that's why he is worth selling. But another thing to mention is the fact that he's got 21 bonus points, the 5th most amongst all players. Only the likes of Toney, Haaland, Harry Kane and Kieran Trippier have more, but I think his time is up and Odegaard is a sell. Saliba picked up an injury against Sporting and also missed the game against Crystal Palace in Game Week 28 as a result, and he's now withdrawn from the France squad. Now, I think that could be tactical by Arteta just to kind of save him and have him ready for Game Week 29. And there are maybe some murmurings amongst the Arsenal community that Saliba will be back for the Leeds at home fixture, but nothing concrete, nothing from a reliable source. So I would still take that with a pinch of salt. Even if Saliba is fit though, I'm not seeing too many clean sheets for Arsenal over the next few game weeks. So I look at Leeds at home, I think Leeds will score. I look at Liverpool away, I definitely don't expect an Arsenal clean sheet. West Ham away and Southampton at home look like the two most likely clean sheets. But even then, a London derby, West Ham could be up for it, and West Ham on their day can cause problems. And then of course Man City away, I'm not even going to mention that as a possible clean sheet possibility. But really with Arsenal defenders, even Gabriel, Ben White and Zinchenko, I think they're all worthwhile sells. Now I think arguably the one I'd want to keep the most of those lot that I just mentioned is Ben White, because he's cheaper, he's also a bit more benchable, and you might have 4 other defenders that have double game weeks in 29, and also some good fixtures when Arsenal you don't expect a clean sheet from, like in game week 30. But honestly with Saliba, I would sell him. He's an injury doubt, he's got some pretty poor fixtures from a defensive point of view, and Arsenal haven't kept enough clean sheets at home, only 3 all season, and even against Palace where they dominated the game, they still leaked in some chances, and Palace could have scored another one on top of the goal they already scored, which was already, it's kind of a recurring pattern here with Arsenal. They're conceding too many goals from set pieces, which has happened since game week 17. Before that, in the first half of the season, Arsenal didn't concede a single goal from set pieces. Now it's happening pretty much every single week. So with Saliba, I think it's a good FPL asset. He could still do well for you, but I would sell him. His ownership is still just under 30%, and he's the second most transferred out player with over 174,000 transfers out, and he's the 4th highest scoring defender. The likes of Ben White, Trippier and Gabriel are the only ones to have more FPL points so far this season, and he's also an injury doubt, as we just mentioned, which is obviously going to be one of the main reasons to sell. But for me, I don't see too many clean sheets for Arsenal over the next 5, even if they win all of these games. So I think Saliba is a sell. And if you want an Arsenal defender, my favourites would be Gabriel and Ben White. Despite what we all think of Danny Ward as a goalkeeper or as an FPL asset, he has done really well. He's only 4 million. He's got quite a lot of points considering his price. And in that regard, he has been a decent FPL choice so far this season. And he actually was the best goalkeeper from game week 9 to 16, delivering so many of his points overall. But before and since then, the returns have just been really poor, and Leicester being so poor defensively really plays a part. You can't get returns if you don't keep enough clean sheets, and Danny Ward, his only return since the World Cup was against Southampton, saving a penalty. Apart from that, he's been pretty useless, and also the main issue now is that Iverson has taken his spot against Brentford, and I expect him to start both games in game week 29 because of Brendan Rodgers' comments, and also I just don't see Danny Ward getting back into the team right now. It makes no sense after Leicester got a positive result against Brentford away, a 1-1 draw, and I don't think Danny Ward will see any game time against Crystal Palace or Aston Villa. Even if he did, I don't see Leicester keeping a clean sheet, and Bournemouth and Wolves at home would be the most likely. But even then, I'm just not really seeing the clean sheets there. No clean sheets since game week 17. So honestly, I think Danny Ward is a sell, especially if you're looking to bench boost. If you aren't bench boosting and you already have a goalkeeper like Kepa in the sticks, then you don't need to prioritize this, and you can sell someone else in the outfield positions and try to target those players instead with a higher ceiling. But if you are bench boosting, every position is important, and I would sell Danny Ward. You've got many options this week. David De Gea, David Raya, Kepa Arrizabalaga, Nick Pope, and also a few others that I'm probably going to forget, like Areola, who could also do really well in game week 29. So Danny Ward is a sell in my opinion. A few things to note is that his ownership is still under 25%, so he's still got quite a lot of owners there, and he's only got 1 return since game week 17, as I said. He's got 12 bonus points, which is very impressive, but even then, I don't think he's going to get game time. I don't see Leicester keeping clean sheets, so I don't see any more bonus points in the near future for Danny Ward, and as a result, I will look to sell Danny Ward and go to another goalkeeper who'll get more clean sheets, more game time, and also be a good season keeper until game week 38. We are now in the final section of this video, talking about the players to skip for Double Game Week 29. Now, I have to admit, Tyrone Mings has been very impressive recently, and he ticks a lot of boxes. He's cheap at only 4.3 million. His ownership is 5%. He's got returns in 3 of his last 4 games, being the highest scoring defender in the last 3 game weeks. So there's a lot of things I do like about Tyrone Mings. He has a double in 29, doesn't blank in Game Week 32, a great fixture against Nottingham Forest at home in Game Week 30. But after that, I don't see many clean sheets for Aston Villa in the long term, and even in 29, I don't think Aston Villa will keep a clean sheet or get defender points against Leicester away or Chelsea away. So quite frankly, I will skip Tyrone Mings, and I think the ship has probably sailed at this point. You look at the underlying numbers as well, they're very poor, even for a centre-back in terms of shots in the box, XG, they're all pretty poor. And actually, the best kind of source of points for Tyrone Mings is assists, those knock-ons from set pieces, and he's got 3 assists all season, which is pretty decent there, of course, for a defender. But I would probably skip Tyrone Mings. I don't think he's that bad. If you want a cheap defender, you can consider Tyrone Mings and Kurt Zouma and a few other options, but I'm not really a big fan, and honestly, I would probably skip him, despite all of these boxes he ticks, the low ownership, the points he's gotten recently, and Aston Villa being one of the best teams since Unai Emery has taken over. And he's also got 12 bonus points, just like with Danny Ward, but even then, that is not enough to convince me that Tyrone Mings is a buy, because I don't see many clean sheets from now until the end of the season, and not many points overall. Jarrod Bowen has been a very big disappointment this season. He was fantastic in the last campaign. He just hasn't been able to match that in this campaign. Now, he has had performances like against Wolves and Everton, where he got 30 points in those 2 games combined, where you just see the explosive potential, but he's been very inconsistent in most of these game weeks. So many blanks in every single game pretty much, and I just don't think it's enough for me to really advocate for Jarrod Bowen. Now, he's got a really good double in 29, 2 home fixtures. You'd back that fixture against Southampton for him to haul. So as a short-term punt or on the free hit, I don't think he's the worst purchase in the world. But I look at all these West Ham assets. They have this big performance in maybe the Europa Conference League, like they did in the 4-0 victory. Jarrod Bowen scored twice in that game, but then they go on to lose the subsequent games and not able to really build upon that victory. Against Everton and Wolves, big victories, not able to build upon that. So I'm very wary about West Ham assets. Now, I do recognise Areola, Kurt Zouma, Ben Rama and Jarrod Bowen as being potentially good options in Game Week 29, but really beyond this double game week, I wouldn't want any West Ham assets. You look at Fulham away, Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away and Liverpool at home, and the only fixture that looks pretty decent for me is Bournemouth away, and the other ones I think West Ham could really struggle. Jarrod Bowen has some decent underlying numbers, but nothing spectacular, and the goals and assists haven't been good enough, and all of them pretty much have come in 1 or 2 games, and Jarrod Bowen can do really well at home. Both games in 29 are at home, but even all of that, his low ownership at 2.7%, that isn't enough to convince me to go for Jarrod Bowen over Brighton midfielders, over Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, and many others who might be cheaper. Even if they're not cheaper, they just offer better value, they get more FPL points, and are season keepers, and with Jarrod Bowen, I just can't say the same. This might be the most contentious part of this video, and I think Kai Havertz is a good option for Game Week 29, but I look at the fixtures afterwards and I look at Chelsea overall, and I'm still not convinced that Kai Havertz is a long-term solution. If you're free hitting, great. I think Kai Havertz could do really well for you. You'll see my thoughts on that as well in all the other kind of best bench boost, wildcard and free hit squads. I have mentioned Kai Havertz as a good option for 29. 2 home fixtures, you can't discount that, but I just don't see long-term sustainability or returns. Now, I have to admit, he's been in really good form in all competitions, scoring in each of his last 3 games with 2 penalties involved as well. Across all competitions, his ownership is 5.9%, and Chelsea have looked better in recent games offensively, creating more chances, scoring more goals, and Kai Havertz has been the focal point of that, but I still wouldn't go for him. I know his underlying numbers are good. It kind of reminds me of the Darwin Nunez situation with good underlying numbers like XG and shots overall, but maybe not enough returns to really justify his price tag. And look, with Kai Havertz, he has the potential. He can haul in certain games. I think he can in Game Week 29, but I wouldn't look to buy him in as a long-term solution. Really, if you do buy him in the end, that's fair enough. I'd buy him for Game Week 29 and then probably look to sell shortly afterwards. The likes of Isak, Haaland, Harry Kane, Ollie Watkins, Ivan Toney once the yellow cards aren't an issue anymore. All of those players are far better strikers in the long term, in my opinion. And there are also some other factors to consider as well. And with Havertz, he's only returned in 7 Premier League games this season, only 7 in 26 appearances. That just goes to show you how inconsistent he is. And I know he has been in recent games in the Premier League and in the Champions League. I don't think that's enough, though, to convince me that Kai Havertz is a buy that can sort your long-term issues for the future. So that's it. We've covered 12 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know if you disagree with any of these. I think Kai Havertz would be the most contentious. And once again, I think some of these players that I talked about skipping, like Jarrod Bowen and Kai Havertz, can do well in Game Week 29, but I don't think they're long-term solutions. And you also have to think about that, especially if you have no free hit in your back pocket, and if you also want to get the best assets for all these game weeks coming up, not just this double. We still have plenty more in Game Weeks 34 and 37. We could have some smaller double game weeks as well in between. So just bear all of that in mind. and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and FPL League. All of that stuff is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Double Gameweek 29 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.